It is about having less handling. It is about having full trucks. Being more efficient.
Hello again and welcome to the Retail Podcast from Slimstock. I'm Will Severn. I'm joined today by Peter Bocken, our head of retail, and Mike, a retail expert, both from Slimstock as well. We're here just to talk about your life in retail, gents. So hopefully we'll be able to get into the skin of the journey that you've been on, why you ended up at Slimstock. But first of all, maybe with you, Peter, let's start with, how did you get into retail? Why did you become a retailer?
Well, I started in retail in 1999, so a long time ago. And at that time I was working for Ahold, for Albert Heijn, for De Tuinen, which was acquired by Holland & Barrett later on. And I was both in commercial departments as in supply chain. And why did I choose for retail? For me, because I had a lot of friends and they went into accountancy, they went into banking. But for me, it was very clear that I want to work with something very tangible. Everybody knows the brand. If you go into a shop, you can really touch the products. Yeah. And for me, this is very important. And I think this was a major thing for me to get into retail.
Yeah, nobody wakes up on the morning of their 9th birthday saying, I wish I was working in supply chain for a retailer, right? But I guess in the long run, you find what you're passionate about. And is that the same for you, Mike?
Slightly different. I think I kind of fell into retail. So I graduated in 96, met my wife at university, moved to Coventry where she lived, or where she was from. And at that point, there were lots of retailers around the area, lots of clothing retailers. And my degree wasn't retail, it was business. So it was, she found the job for me. She had said, this would be good for you, apply for this. And 25, 30 years later,
you're still doing
what
you're told.
It. And still doing what I'm told. And, I think sometimes you end up, perhaps you say, I didn't wake up as a 9-year-old and thought I want to be a merchandiser, but you discover things you didn't realize and you learn to love it. And time goes very fast when you love things.
Yeah, that is genuinely the heartland of fashion retail in the UK, isn't it? It's strangely enough, we're in and around Coventry.
All the 3 biggest retailers are within about 20 miles of each other.
Yeah.
And very incestuous.
Yeah.
And why is it? Why are they based around Coventry?
I think it comes back to the point, a lot of production in the UK was made in Midlands. Shoes in Northampton, knitwear in Nottingham, hosiery in Hinckley. So they kind of gravitated to where the production was. And I think that's where they stuck. Even though production moved to the Far East, it was still their head office. London was too expensive, so it was what was the Midlands, oddly.
But your fashion hasn't been your world, really, has it? You're the other end of the scale. You're everything other than fashion through your career, right?
Well, thanks for the compliment, Will. But no, that's true. I was in food retail first part of my retail life, and after that in non-food retail. But it's funny that you say, because for me, obviously, I talk with a lot of fashion retailers, but still my heart and my core really lies into food and non-food retail.
Yeah.
And it's also very important, I would say, that people use different language, they talk different. So it's very important, I would say, also for implementing our software, that we always have people on board who really understand what people are talking about, who can challenge that. It's no use of getting guys who have been implementing tens of systems, let's say in a wholesale business or in spare part business, and to enter into a retail company.
Yeah.
So, but even for me, driving in a fashion business, then I bring in Mike, or we have also several consultants in the Netherlands who have a fashion background. It's really important to have the right persons on the table.
Yeah.
It's always the same but different, isn't it? Retail's retail, but actually fashion versus food versus something else, they're quite nuanced in terms of the end goals and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think the focus also is way different. When we talk with non-food retailers 20 years ago, but also today, people are talking about lowering their stock levels. If I go into a supermarket, nobody cares about stock levels.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be too high because you don't want to have shrinkage, and it needs to fit in a shelf. But stock value isn't a thing.
Sure.
It's a cash cow anyway. They've got 10, 11, 12 days of stock, payment terms of 60 days. So why bother?
Yeah. But it must have changed a lot. So, I don't want to age you guys, but it's been a couple of decades at least that you guys have been working in the industry. What's changed the most, Mike?
I think things have changed and the fundamentals are still the same. Retail's retail. The principles of what you're trying to do to get a product, to make it appealing, to price it commercially and have customers buy it, that's no different. I think the mechanisms, the platforms by which you can trade, the market's different, the competition's different. But I think the principles of what you're trying to achieve, and I go back to my point about fashion is different to food. I didn't really chase availability, but I chased profitability. The markets are different, but the process by which you do it and the data we have to make decisions now is far more data kind of overwhelmed in some cases. There's so much data around. It's now the skill is reading the data, where in my day there was not that much data. You didn't have transaction analysis and didn't have machine learning. So there's so much more kind of sophistication now, but you still need the basics, the fundamentals, the core principles of what we're trying to achieve.
And that, it's a different environment, isn't it? We probably lived in a world before the internet existed when you started your retail careers, right? So what are we talking about? That omni-channel environment has really driven change in the retail sector, Peter.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's the biggest change and the biggest game changer in retail for the last year. And what you see is that you have your shops, you have your online channel, you have external marketplaces, but also nowadays when people go via TikTok, Instagram, via socials, so it becomes much more difficult and much more complex to manage all these different sales channels, I would say.
Yeah.
But the same actually also when you go when you look at the supermarket business. If you look at the supermarket business nowadays, we don't open so many supermarkets anymore. However, you see different supermarkets, you see different formats. And when I was young and I went out for traveling in Asia, you had these 7-Eleven convenience shops everywhere.
Yeah.
We didn't have them at that time, let's say in the Netherlands. And right now, also when you enter into a city or at the universities, railway stations, you see convenience stores everywhere.
Yeah.
So people consume in a different way, but they buy also in a different way. Obviously, you can also buy it online. So it's way more options that you have from a consumer point of view.
Yeah. And I guess, I remember when I was growing up, every Sunday we went to Tesco's or Sainsbury's and it was the big shop. Everyone, you fill up your full trolley full of all the stuff for the week. Whereas these days, families still do it, but young professionals, it's buy as you go, isn't it? If you're working hard or home delivery.
I think that's one of the challenges for big retailers. We saw it in the 90s and 2000s that this kind of gravitate to huge footprint stores because people are still assuming that the future will always be one big shop per week. And you look at the likes of the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's of the world, they're very space heavy. And now they're having to be creative in terms of what they put in their stores because filling up with stock is the last thing they should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you see the same now with some large electronic retailers in Europe. And they want to be larger and bigger and grow. But right now you see that they cannot provide the right stock rotation of their assortment in their shop. Yeah. So they are closing shops, but they're also making them smaller. And I think the job of the store managers and the people of the store staff will be different. It's more like advising. Later on, I think also they will start repairing more goods in the shops. But it's impossible nowadays to carry the same assortment as 5 years ago.
Sure,
you cannot afford that.
Everything's changing, right? But I guess thinking about the differences, you've Peter specifically, you've spent a lot of time working in the retail market in the Netherlands, but also working in the UK and all around the world. What the main difference is between the UK and the Dutch markets that you can see? But then maybe a second question to that is, what markets are we working in now that you see behaviours now that you saw in our markets a few years ago?
I think when online really kicked in, UK, let's say, was 1 or 2 years ahead of the Netherlands. But at that time also, I had customers in also in electronic retail, for instance, and their online market share was already like 20%. And then I went on implementing the same kind of shops, let's say in Belgium. And I also asked these people over there, okay, well, what about online? They said, oh, it's just like 1% or 2%. Don't bother. We'll just treat it like a shop. So not like in a fulfillment center, no, but like a shop.
Yeah.
It's just shop number 102 or something. But then let's say also for them, within 2 years, they went up to 10%. And right now they must also be way above 20%. So it goes very rapidly. But in essence, I would say the retail, as you say, Mike, it's in essence, it's the same everywhere, but you will have differences.
Yeah.
The same when I'm in, we did implementation, let's say in Dubai, and then when we talk about efficiency, then they say, well, Peter, don't talk about efficiency. We replenish everything by one.
Right.
People, they don't cost anything in a warehouse. Trucks, they don't cost anything. Oil, well, it's almost for free for us.
Yeah.
So we replenish everything by one. And then, or the other way around, we are implementing now, let's say, in the Philippines. And if you have a drugstore, and in here, well, we just buy one package with 12 or 24 pieces, tablets in it. And over there, they say, no, we don't do packaging. No, we replenish by one. Because tablets, obviously the minimum order quantity, let's say it's still a box.
Yeah.
But when customers come in, they say, I want to have 3 tablets. Okay. So, well, and then it's I would say it's a different supply chain.
Yeah.
And then when we talk over there about, let's say, lead times or how their order interval, they say, well, lead times, it's somewhere between 3 and 14 days. I say, well, but why? Well, we have a shop over there, and the truck needs to take at least 2 boats to get there. And for a certain island, well, the boat only goes, let's say, once per week, but you don't know it in advance.
Sounds fun. Sounds a perfect retailer.
Yeah, but it's way different all around. But in essence, it's about having the right stock at the right moment, at the right place.
Yeah.
And thinking about getting the right business rules in place and have enough safety stock in place to make sure that the truck can wait, let's say, for 1 week.
Yeah. I think go back to your point about difference in the UK and Holland. I think we had a more established high street before you guys did. And we haven't now. We've probably lost a lot of our high street. But we were probably 2 or 3 years ahead of, making the mistakes we made early, kind of steered the UK retail business into a certain direction. But actually, it's the same whether you're retail, high street, wholesale, whatever you are. It's the same principles. But I'd say we're probably 2 or 3 years ahead because we had quite established, well-known British brands that had been there forever, and less so now.
Yeah, the same. Also, I think that's why we have quite some people from the UK in the boards, especially for fashion retailers in the Netherlands. The other way around, they're not so many.
So let's try and take it back to you guys a little bit. So tell me about your biggest mistake or one thing you would do differently now. Looking back in your career, what would you do differently than you did at the time? It could be a specific incident or a way of working or whatever.
I think firstly you have to embrace your mistakes. You have to accept that if you're and again I'm talking from a fashion perspective, part of fashion is doing things and taking risks and making things. It's not everything will be a bestseller. And the worst thing you can do is be very risk averse and the range becomes bland and no one buys it. But part of that taking risks is you will make mistakes, and you've got to accept the fact that you hope the mistakes you make are in a very few number of stores. You don't want to make a mistake in 1,000 stores, make a mistake in 10 stores. But I go back to my career and I started as an allocator, and at that point you were allocating products, but you didn't really know what the product was. Sometimes the description wasn't very, this has gone back to, late 90s where you couldn't have 255 characters on the description. It would say sock. So you allocate a sock. Next week you get a call from a store in Northern Ireland saying, why have you sent me an England sock? And this is a genuine example where, you make mistakes and you kind of roll with it, but you learn, you embrace the mistakes and you don't shy away from them.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you don't make many of them, But there's almost a mistake that is a mistake in doing something with a product, and there's a mistake in terms of buying a product that ends up being a worse seller. That's just part of the game we play.
Yeah, you're better off making the mistakes and learning from them than being risk averse.
I think so. Everything. Make a mistake, make it quickly, learn from it. Make a decision, make it quickly, learn from it. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision or not make a mistake or not put yourself in a position where you'll ever make a mistake.
Anything that you recall through your career that you might have done differently if you had your time again?
That's more that I would like to touch this point that you say, okay, make a decision. I also have been working in Sweden, and in Sweden people hardly make decisions, and they hardly make decisions very fast. And then in Norway, well, they already did it much more faster when I used to work over there.
Yeah.
And over there, people really said, okay, it's better to take a wrong decision today than no decision and wait for tomorrow. So in their way, but they measured everything over there.
Yeah.
And this is what I really like. This is also why I really am a big fan of working with KPIs, so that you can see an immediate impact of what you are doing. And if you see it goes wrong, well, then take a different decision.
Yeah.
But really be on top of it. And I think this is what I would do different when I would start all over again.
Yeah.
I would be much more busy looking at my KPIs. If I see things going down or going up, then immediately take action.
Yeah. But it hasn't changed really, has it, from the start? It's been a retailer. It's been, Mike, you talk about trading a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a commercial
It's a
mind.
mentality.
Yeah.
Imagine you had one shop and now you've got 1,000 shops. The only difference is you've got 1,000 shops. You're still a retailer. And I don't know if I walk into a store with my wife and I'm counting products on the rail and I'm checking availability and doing my wife's head in. But that's what I do. I can't help it. That's just how I've kind of evolved. But it's a mentality that you never lose. I always think as a retailer, even though as I've progressed out of the industry, I'm still a retailer first and foremost.
Yeah, I've got the same. I'm doing the grocery shopping myself. Everybody says, well, okay, do it online, but I really like to be in a supermarket. I like food. I like shopping in a supermarket. I don't like shopping in a fashion retail environment.
Yeah.
But also then when they have a change of a planogram, for instance, and it's like an easy one, like all the sodas, then it takes weeks for some retailers to get really up and running. And you see different, you see empty shelves, you see overstocking, you see things that are not going to be replenished in the right direction. Yeah. You see it immediately.
So you guys still spend quite a lot of time in and around retailers. We have had a podcast about trends, but what are the key topics of conversation right now that you're talking when you're in meetings? What matters to the retail world?
I still think retailers, they're still trying to drive profit. They're still trying to drive efficiency. Their aim is to be profitable, make money. And
business is business.
Business is business, and that's what they should be doing. But at the same time, there's now a recognition that simply doing business isn't enough. As a consumer, as a customer, I want ethical sourcing. I want transparency. I want to see that the customer, the business I'm buying from, is doing the right thing, because there's been so many instances where things have gone wrong, and the cheapest price isn't always the best product. So you have to accept that as a retailer. Yes, you want to make a profit, but not at the expense of everything else. And I think that's more true now than it's ever has been. And I think now we see more and more retailers, part of their mission statement is ethics, traceability, transparency, and corporate governance. And they're proud about it. They're ahead of the curve rather than being constantly chasing it. And that's probably the biggest change from a high level that we've seen in the last probably 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, and those businesses, like our customer Mud Jeans, right? They're even changing the commercial model to reflect that, right?
Yeah, correct. And also, if I'd like to add, what are people talking about today? It's for me, it's about efficiency. People can't get enough staff in, or they don't want to have enough staff in if they can't pay it. Because in the end, you need to be profitable. And I think, next year it can become quite difficult for some of the retailers. And we have already seen some retailers that unfortunately go bankrupt. So people are going to stay much more on being more efficient, being more profitable. So it is, when I talk with people about lowering the number of order lines, it is about having less slow-moving stock. It is about decreasing waste. It is about having less handling. It is about having full trucks. Being more efficient.
Yeah, and I think as well, efficiency and profit, they go hand in hand. When I first started my career, you could afford to be quite inefficient because one, you were cheap labor, you're buying from Far East. You could put the prices up and customers would buy them because there was very little competition. And also your margin was good. The dollar rate was very favorable in terms of the UK. So I think there's been a transition where efficiency's always been there, but now it's crucial. Now it's imperative. If you're not efficient, you're not going to achieve your profit. So it's now fundamental, where before it was a nice thing to be.
Yeah, and I think also you need to be very fast, very agile. And we've seen that, let's say, in the last few years, we've had a lot of disruptions. I think in the last 5 years, we have more disruptions than in 20, 30 years before that. So people have learned to become agile. And it's a different mentality. And this is also, I think, why supply chain has become much more a board topic.
Yeah.
Supply chain didn't have a seat at the table. They had a seat somewhere down under in the warehouse.
Sure.
And please don't come to the headquarters. When I started, let's say in retail, we still seen a lot of retailers. They had their planning department in the warehouse. They didn't see any daylight.
Yeah.
You can't imagine that. And nowadays, well, if you would have, if you want to have people applying for a job, you need to have a nice environment. It's different people. They communicate at different levels with the product manager, with category managers.
Yeah, and supply chain is a conversation now. I'll take it back to my aged parents. Through COVID, my dad was talking about the cost of freight. He's never thought about that in his life. It's in the public.
It's a deliverable in terms of commercial. If your supply chain is flawed, then your commercial structure is going to fall as well.
Yeah, and I also think that the relationship between category management and supply chain or planning has become also a little bit more equal. In the past, the category manager, he had a double, triple salary compared with his or her supply chain partner.
Yeah.
And I think when you go into managing a web shop, then the commercial and supply chain becomes much more even. Everything is much more data driven. They can all communicate very well. So it's a different ball game. And you see also these people, they go out and they work for traditional retailers.
Yeah, it's a bit like in my world, the old buyer and merchandiser relationship. There was never a parity between buyer and merchandiser. At the same time, you're right, supply chain was, it was adversarial. They worked for me to deliver stock, and it wasn't collaborative. But as we've kind of grown into what they bring to the table and how they support the commercial team, it has to be collaborative. Yeah,
but on top of that, it's about the digitization of these businesses, right? So you need, people have always been there, and the quality of people needs to get better. But you need to embrace technology. Yeah, the retailers are now in a position where it's really crucial that technology is going to drive. You've told me the story a few times, Mike. The reason you progressed in your career because you did that, but that technology was Excel.
Yeah, I think I'd hold my hands up. My career kind of thrived and flourished because I was good at Excel. And if you could do something that nobody else could, you kind of rose. And as good as that was, it was limited because as you leave the business, you're exposing that business to risk. Yeah. And if anything, it's one of the reasons that we exist to try and mitigate that because...
But we all still meet those retailers. We still all meet those retailers who are working in Excel to deliver the core functions of the business.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes then it just ends at line 100,000 because then it becomes really difficult. And it's okay, we need to have something scalable.
Sure, yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit before we wrap up about retail, your lives in retail and what you miss about it. What is it about the retail world? Maybe Mike, start with you that you miss.
I think I'm privileged by the fact that I get the best of both worlds. I get the touch points of retail, and we can talk to different customers and have different challenges and different conversations. I don't get the buzz of a trading meeting anymore. I don't spend Sunday afternoon creating a narrative of my Monday trade meeting. I don't have open to buy meetings. So I kind of gain more and more customers to speak to and get more insights of their world. But it kind of washes over me because I'm not really invested into
Different
it.
type of pressure.
Yeah, I'm not accountable for it. So in that sense, you get all the conversations, all the narrative, all the discussion without any of the pressure. It's a strange, but I kind of miss sometimes that the thing I miss the most. And this is the case if you've had a really good week or a really bad week. I miss the buzz of having to explain, having to trade, having to be agile and trade. And I think, I said before, retail is about trade mentality, about running a business, and that's what I miss the most.
Yeah. And Peter?
Yeah, actually, I agree. It's this Monday morning meeting where you discuss the previous week, looking at sales, looking at the promotions, what goes well, what doesn't, what can you still change. But also when you have these hypes on new products, a new introduction, new planograms kicking in, and always something goes wrong up front. So and then really together with the team trying to get the best things going on.
Yeah, it's reactive. It's live, isn't it? You can't that.
Retail's like a jigsaw. You plan a jigsaw, and in your head you've got a view what the jigsaw is. But as you start trading, it turns into a different jigsaw. You have to now adapt and change direction, and that's the buzz. That's the dynamic of retail.
Planning's one thing, but
without a plan, you're struggling. But unless you deviate from that plan, if you need to, it's just as bad as having no plan.
Yeah. All right. Final question: if you were talking to yourself or somebody right now starting the journey in retail, what advice would you give them? Maybe start with you, Peter.
I think it's very important that obviously you will work, let's say, in headquarter, in supply chain, the planning department, and just don't stay there. Go and check the outcomes of your work really in the shop, and then you will really see from a consumer's point of view. Okay, what does your work look like? Talk with the people in the shops, talk with people in the warehouse. They will tell you a lot, things that you might not see in the figures, but it'll help you to tune your replenishment.
Because at the end of the day, they're your customer. They're that's why you're there. They're the reason you're able to do the job right.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
I think the first one is enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, maybe it's not for everybody. Get out. It's scary when you can look up and 20 years have passed and your career's you've got 20 years experience and you've loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
But I always see also people that resent it. And I always say in every life, not just retail in life, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Find something you enjoy and monetize it or do what I do.
But you see many people also who are in retail, they will stay in retail.
Yeah.
If you are, let's say, 5 years in retail, then the rest of your life probably will be in retail, or as we do now, we are always surrounded by retailers. Yeah. Sometimes I also see people, they work, let's say, for suppliers for 10 years, and then they go into retail. And in a lot of cases, I see, they have a hard time. As I sometimes say, let's say if you are the responsible for a product launch for Unilever, for instance, you have been working with a full team on 2 or 3 of these products for half a year, for a year.
Yeah.
And obviously, then it needs to succeed, and otherwise you have a huge issue.
Yeah.
But actually, it's just about 3 items. And from a supply chain point of view, for a retailer, you have thousands of items coming in, new items. You have hundreds of suppliers coming in.
Yeah.
So it's about being fast, and part of it will fail, and part of it will succeed. Yeah. And as you started, actually, Mike, it's failure is not wrong. It's part of the deal.
Yeah, I would say take it seriously, not personally, and accept the fact that you will get some things wrong. And if you're not, you're probably not trying hard enough. And if the business is built to be agile and accept the fact that not every product will be a bestseller, it's also putting your time and effort on the products that are likely to either hurt you the most, reward you the most.
Yeah.
And, I kind of fell into retail and I fell out of retail, both due to my wife, which I'll hold her accountable. But I still get the best thing now is I get best of both worlds.
Yeah.
All the retail conversations, still the buzz of doing it. But now I do it from an outsider looking in rather than an insider looking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I must say also now when I'm outside looking in, that I still see that you can make even more difference. You can even make more impact.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's still hard to convince retailers.
Sure.
However, the impact can be huge.
I guess the difference is now, rather than being boxed into one or two businesses, your experience is multiple retailers, hundreds of retailers over your career now, and supporting a wider group of people.
I love it now when a retailer calls me up and asks for my opinion on something, not even supply chain related. They just want to. I'm a kind of safe environment where they can ask a question and get an experience. I love those conversations.
Yeah.
And that's 25, 30 years down the line, I'm still as passionate now as I was back when I first started in '96.
Yeah. Look, we could be here all day, but I just wanted to thank you both for your time, and thanks everyone for listening to the podcast today. This is the Retail Podcast from Slimstock. Cheers.